Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back to another all mod update. So I just wanted to really quickly go over the notes on the new update because this one is kind of a bigger one. Usually I just make a post saying, you know, new mod update, go get it. But this time it is a pretty big, massive change to a lot of different things. So I wanted to review the changes so that you guys knew what was coming. So I have a whole list on my other side of the screen here, and I'm just going to go through all the notes so that we can review everything without taking too much of everybody's time. So for every single map that I have, there's been a huge change in the weight of the logs. So the logs are now significantly lighter. As you can see, I can probably pick this one up and actually carry it now. I was going the route of making the logs way heavier all the time, and heavier and heavier and heavier. And the biggest problem I started running into was, as I made the logs heavier, I had to keep making the machines heavier. And then I hit a big bridge in the suspension where I just couldn't go any further, and the logs were not interacting very well. So now with the logs being lighter, again, you still can't pick up some of these bigger ones, but with the logs being lighter, I can keep the machines at their current weight from the last update, but now they interact with the logs way more efficiently. Like they don't bounce around as much. It's always a battle when I'm modding to try to find a balance between the weight of the machine for stability and then the weight of the log and the dynamic physics for keeping it so that it's, you know, kind of on par. But ultimately, my goal as a modder is I want these machines to be able to control these logs more so than the logs controlling the machines. So I want the logs to always be less weight and less basically hassle to deal with than the machine's weight itself. So by taking a step back and really playing with the weights here, I was able to do that. Now these machines are still compatible with all the regular like Farming Simulator base maps. They're compatible with any other modders maps who makes logging stuff. It'll still work with their version of the trees, but I've done a lot of dynamic changes to make it so these logs settle a lot nicer. You'll find that these logs do not roll as much. So if you're working on hills and stuff, you'll notice they still have a roll to them, like they'll go down, but they settle a lot faster, which is a huge performance gain for us too, because then the logs aren't always constantly jittering around, and the machines can handle them and push them around really good. So I'm going to use this machine. I'm actually going to kill off another note on my list here. So the Timber Pro had a huge issue with frame rate performance. And basically what was happening was anybody who ran this machine from first person, from this view, was getting these huge frame rate drops, like down to 30 frames a second, which is not good. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was causing it. Turned out it was a reflection issue with this material right here. So I had a couple people say, Jordan, what's going on here? For some reason, I can see through the machine. And I didn't know what they were talking about until I went into the editor. So on some people's settings, when they had them set to a particular way, you can actually see an invisible reflection right through this material. And what was happening was it was causing like a double mirrored image of the world around us. So every time you were running this machine, it would literally be an entire mirror of the rendered world that we're looking at. So it was almost like it was rendering the world 2 times. That's why it was really hurting performance for a lot of people. So that has been corrected now. The reflection is gone off of this. I had the exact same problem with the T800 Kenworth black truck, where the stacks on the exhaust were all reflective, and that was causing some issues as well, but that is corrected with this update as well. So I just wanted to really give you a quick demonstration of the lightness of the trees here. So let's go take a look here. So normally these trees, when they're full weight, even with these heavy machines, would knock them around pretty good. Now these trees are much lighter. I mean, I'm sure you could still, if you really whip the head back and forth, I'm sure you could still get some movement in the machine. Like you get a little bit of a jitter if you really slam it. But for the most part, this is the biggest tree that I have really in the game for weight. And this machine, on all the machines, now handle them super well. And you'll find that even when you're picking up grabs off the ground, the machines don't bounce around. Like they're a lot more stable, even since the last update. So the lighter trees does make a big difference. Now, granted, this is Farming Simulator, and it is the game's physics, so they're never going to be 100% to what obvious reality is. But I think this is a huge step for getting a little bit better control of the logs and a little bit more fun for everybody. And that way you don't have to have FDR logging equipment to knock down those big heavy trees, because you'll be able to use whatever you want on all of the maps. So that's kind of a nice improvement. Just going to lay that right in there. Okay, well, we're not going to bunch the whole episode because, you know me, I'll just get into it and that'll get bad. So I'm just going to park this guy over here, and we'll leave it there. But yeah, so frame rate issue fixed on that guy, and the lighter trees is a huge, huge change. So make sure when you guys do the download, I'm going to have a download all update so you guys can download everything. But when you do download it, make sure you get all the maps and replace the maps. It shouldn't affect anybody's save games. I cannot account for if trees grow back. That's kind of, the game does that on its own. But that's just one thing you got to less worry about. So getting back to our list here. So all machines have been updated for universal sensitivity across all ARM attachments. So what that means, for some reason, probably just somewhere during my testing, I failed to check. Some of these machines had more sensitive controls or less sensitive controls than other machines. So for instance, this boom might have gone down faster in one machine, but slower in another. Or the rotation of the head may have gone slower on one machine, but not another. And so what I did is I went through every single machine, including the forwarder, including the self-loader, everything that has a crane arm, and I've matched all of it up the same. So that way you guys, when you get your control set, you're not going to be finicky back and forth between machines. It's going to be the same kind of smooth rotation across the board for everything. So hopefully that'll be a good change for you guys. So for all machines, and this is kind of an iffy update part, but a lot of people were reporting an issue when they turned the cab of the machine left and right. They said the tracks on the machine would slide. Now, there's a couple reasons this happens, and it's mostly, like right now you can see the tracks aren't going anywhere. They're sitting perfectly smooth. Everything's good, right? But if you have a very low frame rate, for instance, if you have a lower-end computer or just your performance is really low, what was happening, and what it probably still happens a little bit. So right now, if I turn this on, which allows me to see the whole world here, collision-wise, my frame rate's sitting at 18 frames a second, which is really horrible. That's a very low frame rate. So now, when I turn my machine, what was happening, even at a low frame rate, is the tires would slide because the game was constantly jumping to catch up with the frames. So I've done a couple of changes to the suspension on the machines, and I've done a couple changes to the weights on the machines to make it so hopefully no one's going to have that issue anymore. Now, if you have a giant load of logs in your grapple, there's still a possibility it might happen a little bit, but there's no way it'll be as bad as it used to be. So I'm hoping that fixes that issue for people who are saying, you know, why is your machine spinning every time I turn left or right? And that was just a low FPS issue. And I did experience that when I cranked up the frame rate, or I cranked up the graphics to lower the frame rate. I was experiencing that jumping of the tracks, and it should be all corrected now for people that were having that issue. So what else we got on our list here? We have all track machines and all wheeled machines have had a big update for smoother transitioning on the suspension. So what happens now is the machines are just a lot smoother. So before, when you used to drive around, even in first person, like, it's pretty smooth now. Everything stays pretty smooth. Like, there's not bouncing around. But what was happening before was while you're in the cab, for some reason, the tracks would, like, it'd catch. So it'd be like, jig, 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 and your screen would almost, like, jump around a little bit in a really glitchy, unnatural way. This has been corrected now with the new suspension and new weights of these machines. With that sacrifice, though, unfortunately, came a little bit of a weirder-looking issue. It's not performance affecting, but it's visually affecting. So what you'll notice on these machines, which is really strange, and it's something that I can't change it because it messes it up, but the tracks almost float a teeny bit off the ground when you first start driving. So, like, for instance, right now I'm driving. It's really hard. It's kind of hard to see it, but you can see there's, like, a teeny bit of a gap. It's almost like an inch space of gap underneath the tire. This happens on wheeled machines as well as the track machines. It's not super noticeable, but I'm sure someone would have pointed it out. That's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. So as you're driving, though, you'll notice the machine, like if I inch ahead, you see that front track how it's almost into the ground, but then you look at the backtrack and it's like sticking up a bit. This is something to do with the actual tires on the track itself. I know it's really hard for you to see that, so let's maybe not do that. Let's go to this view. Okay, so that's the tire right there. Now, for some odd reason, these tires, even with the suspension I have set, sink into the ground a little bit. So what I did is I lowered the tires themselves down a teeny bit so that it lifts the machine up so that even when it's at its highest sinking point, the tracks aren't particularly going directly into the ground. So as you can see, as I'm inching forward, you see now the back track almost drops down. And that's something to do with the physics with the tire reacting to the ground. That's something I can't really control. But now, even at full drop, they still at least stay above the ground. The problem I was having before was if I don't have it so the tires sit up a little bit, the whole track looks like it's sunk right into the cement, and that it looked really, really horrible. So this is kind of the difference. Now if I go full bore and drive here, back up, see how it pops out of the ground a little bit? It's kind of weird that way, but it doesn't affect the game, doesn't affect performance. It's just a little bit of a weird thing that you might notice. Just ignore it. It's not going to hurt you at all while you're playing. I just wanted to point it out so you guys were aware of it. And it does happen on some of these tires as well. See how they're kind of sunken into the ground a little bit? And then if I drive it, they might pop out. Actually, I don't know if this one pops out because it's got a lot of weight on it, but yeah, just if you notice that, it is normal. It's not a game-breaking issue. And that's the same for all of these machines when I'm talking about suspension. These machines, when you were driving them before, they would be really rickety. Like they'd be really bing, 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 bouncing up and down like in a sharp kind of way. Now you'll notice when you drive all of the equipment, it is very smooth. Like you can stay pretty level. I mean, it's rocking back and forth because of the suspension in the middle, like bouncing around, but that's totally normal. But it's smooth now. Very smooth driving. Very nice that way. Really love it. I think you guys will be really happy with the way it is on that. For all attachments, so every single attachment in the game, meaning buncher heads, grapples, everything, the weight on them has been lowered about half of its current weight. This was just to compensate for the new logs. It also allows a lot more stability of the machine when you're shifting the head back and forth. The Waratah fixed head, which is on this guy, this head has been altered now. So I've had a huge pile of requests and kind of complaints about having the double claws separate of each other because everybody says, what's the point? Why do you do it? It's dumb. I hate having that other claw not close or not open because I have to control it with another button. So I have removed the movement of this back claw entirely. These claws are fixed in place. They do not move. They are just there for support. The only claw that does move is this one, and it's hooked to your main grapple. So for instance, when I'm going, that back claw no longer moves, just this section moves. Now, in turn, by doing this, I've actually made an extremely efficient processor head because it's so much easier to cut logs now. So now you're not worried about that back grapple because it's kind of tucked away. You're only worried about grabbing with these front claws. So when you go in for a grab, you can just aim, grab that log, and you're good to go. That's how you do your cut. So for instance, let's do some cut practice. One big problem I always watch people using this equipment is when they go to grab from a pile, those back tongs are like sticking in the way. So a lot of the time they grab wrong. So this way you'll be able to go into your pile, grab, do your first cut, process your tree, whatever. We don't need to do that. And it's really easy to go back and grab another log. Like it's not hard to do. I'm 100% sure I will see people processing way more efficiently now because you're not worried about those back claws. They are literally just there for support of the log. Like I said, they kind of sit in there. It keeps the log from bouncing out of control side to side, but at the same time, it doesn't become performance affecting when you're in full production mode. So I think you guys will do a lot better for processing. It'll seem a little bit weird maybe because you're used to those claws, but trust me, as a guy who's been using them for 3 years now, I got used to it very, very quick cutting them. The only difference will be now when you pick stuff up, it might be a little bit trickier because that back claw is not there for support, so you might get it kind of teeter-tottering down. If that's the case, just find the middle point on the log and pick it up where the weight point is, or pick up multiple logs so it kind of locks together, if I can do that. Oops. And then they won't kind of peter back and forth. So you can still use it for basic operation. Again, this isn't meant for picking up logs. It's just a bonus feature that you can do. But grabbing logs out of a pile, way, way easier. And I know that's going to be something I think a lot of people will be happy about. So that's a good one too. Small arm fixed clam. I don't have that, but that's the small arm fixed clam. This guy here for the forwarder. I basically just I changed the shape of the log, the way it collects logs. I changed the collisions on it. I changed a whole bunch of the physics points. Picks up logs a lot better than it used to, so that'll be a nice change. The Timber Pro, we already talked about that. That was just the FPS issue got fixed. The Barco forwarder, we've done the suspension change on it. We've also fixed the exit point. So on the old machine, if you had the machine turned this way, like with a kind of an angled turn, anytime you got out of the machine, you'd be stuck kind of in the frame because the exit point was wrong. Now when you get out of the machine, you pop out just by this front tire like you're supposed to. So that was just a little correction thing I had to do for that mod. So all trailers now have a teeny, so we're going to go over to the trailers here. So all of the log trailers, every trailer has a tiny bit of slide on the back. Not as bad as like on ice like it used to be, but it's also a little bit more give so that the trucks don't bounce when you're going around corners. So that was a nice little correction. The medium length log trailer, which is way back here, is now black, just like the other trailers. I just wanted to make it universal. Because it was weird having one red one stand out from the rest. I just didn't like it. So this has been reverted back to a black color. The low bed has now has a reduced weight and a more balanced suspension for loading. So actually, we're going to really quickly load up this trailer with this guy here, and I want to show you guys how amazing the trucks have become as well. Because we're just moving into the truck section. Actually, so why don't we end on the truck section since I have everything here. So we're going to jump down the list a little bit here. So we're going to skip the trucks. High stacker. So a real quick look at the high stacker. The high stacker now has a totally remodeled claw on it. So let's see here. So it's very similar to the old claw, but it's been remodeled. The one that we currently had a whole bunch of polygon issues where the textures were jumping and it looked a little weird. So I've reverted it, cleaned it up. It looks a lot better. It's still not like, the best model in the world, but it's got a new opposing separate claw, so they're not exactly identical claws. This one's got a little bit of a gap in it. I fixed the issue where this thing would get stuck sideways. So it doesn't go a full 90 degrees left and right anymore, because what would happen is a lot of guys would be dragging it on the ground and it would get stuck in that position the way it's looking right now. So when I raised my head, it wouldn't fall down. It would get stuck sideways. It was kind of an annoying issue, but I just reduced its ability to turn, so it's much more efficient now. So let's do a quick log test here. The mill has now added these side kind of big pieces of steel, and these are just sliders basically. So before we used to have those kind of stakes that stuck out of the side. But the big problem there was what happened is if a log got turned sideways even a little bit, it would sometimes get jammed into those little stakes. And a whole bunch of people said that it was really annoying and it was hard to get the logs to stay in there. So I've taken those stakes out completely and replaced it with these smooth panels. Basically now it's just a chute, so we can drop the wood right in here and it'll go down without a problem. Another thing I fixed with the mill is I add some lighting. So we have some dynamic lights on all sides of the mill that kind of light up the work area for people who wanted to use this at night. There's also kind of a cool light that's a little red guy here for a warning light and some other stuff just to kind of perk it up a little bit. Makes it look a lot nicer. So I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of how that works. So let's grab our logs. And like I said, our logs are way lighter now, so they interact a lot better with the grapples. It's quite nice. So yeah, before, if I drop these kind of on an angle, they would get stuck on those beams, right? Now, because these things are so slippery, everything just kind of feeds down, slides along these plates, and pulls it right into the mill, no problem. So let's make sure that we can live up to our truth here and see a load get slipped in. Like I said, these panels are really nice for just keeping the load straight. It's also if you have something like the Laterno or a bigger machine for unloading logs or longs, you can drop them in there, and it keeps it really uniform as it feeds it into the mill. And then all the little bits and pieces get chopped up. Oh, yes, another thing for the sawmill, the price has been increased now. So when you sell wood, it's going to be worth a lot more than it was before. A little, like probably double, if not a little bit more than it used to be. It's still not like over the top, giving you way too much price for your wood, but it's not so little that you don't make any advancement if you're trying to sell your logs. It's kind of a happy medium place. Because I had a lot of people say, oh, the sawmill's nice and I really like it, but it's dumb because I can put a whole load of shorts in there and I only make, $5,000 or something. Which, although is slightly realistic, I can understand people want to advance in the game a little faster. So now maybe a bundle of shorts will be worth, $15,000 as opposed to $5,000. So it's a little bit of a jump for sure. But you guys can experiment with the prices and the logs and see what you guys like. That pretty much covers that. So the last thing I want to talk about is the trucks themselves. So all of the trucks have had a suspension and weight balance change. The tires now have full rotating suspension that goes up and down. Before, they only had like a very minimal amount of suspension, which caused a lot of hiccups. So I'm just going to load a vehicle on here to show how good it is. We'll straighten this guy out. We'll just leave that on there. So I'm just going to lock it down. So the tracks they do slide if you're not working on it very well. If you leave it sit there for a long time not locked, it will eventually start to slide off of it. That's just the weight of the machine versus the weight of the trailer. It's not something I can easily correct. It's got to stay like that. Okay, so we got that guy on there. We'll raise our ramp. Now, like I said, the first thing you guys will notice immediately when you're driving these trucks is they stick to the road now. They're not bouncy. Well, they're not bouncy like side to side. So let's get this guy really going here. Now, I want you guys to watch the tires. They have an extreme amount of suspension. So as I go up this little ridge, if you watch the front tire, you can see how far that suspension comes down. See how much give it's got? So it's got quite a bit. It's actually got even more than that. I gave it an extreme drop for give on it so that it does bounce up and down, and you can clear bumps and stuff a lot nicer. So we're going to just give her here for a minute. And then I'm going to take you on one final thing to kind of break the truck, I think. You still want to slow down on corners a little bit. The steering's been improved. It's less sharp than it was, but it's still very accurate. Oops, I was just trying not to hit that stop sign because I don't want to get hung up on it. So now when you're driving around, you're going to find it's so much easier to stay on the road. It doesn't slide around. It doesn't bounce around. It just stays very stuck to the road. You can still launch it off of a jump and crash it and do whatever you want, but you'll notice it feels smoother. The truck doesn't vibrate, and when I turn side to side, it doesn't roll. The truck doesn't roll left and right really hard like it used to, which is a really nice change. And it's made a huge difference for me even when my regular campaign's playing, because it just stays straight and I can drive and there's no problem. One thing that is to grant, if you do have a machine on there, the machine is heavier than the truck. So watch, I'm going to jackknife the truck right now, and I want you to watch what happens. So as I turn too sharp, boom, that's what's going to happen. So that's basically the truck being too light compared to the load. Just like real life, what'll happen is your truck will jackknife and everything will just jar up. So if you're going to make a 90-degree turn, do what you do in real life. Slow down. But this thing can go up to 103 kilometers an hour, and it stays pretty efficiently on the road. If you're thinking a big turn, a big sharp turn is coming up, slow down. Pull back on your brake. Take your foot off the gas, just like real life. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take it kind of off-roading a little bit, because I want to show you the suspension. So as I drive, you'll see as the suspension goes up and down over all this different terrain, it goes up, it goes down, but it does have a very nice compression ratio on the suspension itself. So even when you're driving in first person, now if you compare this to the older trucks, it was just up and down and smash and smash and smash and up and down and smash and bouncing you all over the road, and it looked like it was a alien bathtub toy or something. It was really bad. But now, even driving over this really, really rough terrain, and I mean, the faster you go, the more glitchy I'm sure it'll get, but it feels really smooth even driving over this stuff. when on the old truck, there's no way in heck you'd be able to drive over this stuff smoothly because it would bounce all around. So like I said, now you get a little bit of a jump, but it's not anywhere near what it used to be. I'm actually just going to detach from the truck here for a minute. So you can actually navigate these areas, and your suspension will pop and jump, and it's very realistic in terms of how it feels. May not look 100% realistic all the time, but it's as close as we can get. But I did have a crap ton of complaints about people saying the truck is way too rigid, and with its weight, it doesn't drive through the terrain properly. So I spent a good couple days playing solidly just on the suspension to find a smooth balance that can still haul stuff loaded or empty without being way too over the top. And I think it's excellent compared to what it used to be. So yeah. So that basically sums it up for the all mod update. I know that was a bit of a spiel, but I really wanted to go into details because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about the changes, and hopefully I answered them all. But if you guys have any other questions or comments relating to the update or things that you discover that you don't like, either leave a comment in this video, or you can come over to the FDR Logging Discord. There's a link in the in this video and all FDR Logging videos to get you over there. You can download this update right now. There is a download all button at www.fdrlogging.com. You just click on Farming Simulator 2019, and there will be a download all button right there. And that will download all the machines, all of the maps, all in one thing. You just got to unpack them and put them into your game, and you're good to go. After I release the next mod, that download all link disappears because I have to keep re-updating everything. So make sure you get it this week if you want it as a download all. If not, you can still download them all. You just have to click on each piece of equipment individually to get the updated version. Yeah, so like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them below. But if not, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the new update. Have a nice day.